Guys, it's that time again. Now first off, I wanted to say I'm sorry if this review is getting out to you a little late. As I mentioned in my last video, I have been getting over the flu, and that cough I showed you after the credits, it has been lingering on me. Anyway, I'm really excited to be reviewing this next movie for you, Back to the Future Part 3, but I wanted to begin with a little disclaimer. Now, if you've been watching my videos and happen to catch my Die Hard 2 review, you'll notice that I take a little jab at myself when I mention that I'm a firm believer that most series should be watched in order. And I did this because afterwards I realized that I never really had mentioned that to you guys before because I hadn't reviewed a sequel up to that point. Joe.
What?
What? You've made a mistake on that review.
What?
You haven't told them you believe most series should be watched in order.
What?
Say what again?
Is that a sonic screwdriver?
Yes, it is.
Am I the doctor?
What? Never mind.
Why are you here? That is, why am I here? Why are me here?
Look, I'm from the future. You said you had told your subscribers you believe that most series should be viewed in order, but you've never said that before because you've never reviewed a series up to this point. You need to make a joke of it now so that I can later address it in the future in another review.
Oh.
That seems awfully convenient.
No minor mistake. That was seemingly inconsequential and orchestrated a turn of events that would lead us to this moment now and shape the way we view the patterns of our physical dimensions and that of time and space and would ultimately mold forever how we perceive. Sorry. I guess what I'm saying is that I think you should watch the first two Back to the Futures before watching this review because there's going to be spoilers.
Unbelievable.
That being said, I am still going to try to hold back on most of the details because if you decided you wanted to watch this review, I don't want it to ruin the series for you, and I want you to be able to discover this one for yourself. And if you're asking me, Joe, why are you holding back on details nearly 30 years after this has been released? Well, let me just say that the first time I watched this series was within the last couple of years. First time. I know, I was really late to the party on this one, but miraculously I managed to avoid nearly every major spoiler, and let me just go ahead and tell you, I love this series. Alright, with that out of the way, I think we can now safely dig into Back to the Future Part 3, directed by Robert Zemeckis and starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. Now, like any time travel story, the details can sometimes be confusing to the uninitiated, so I just wanted to remind you, pay attention. While adventuring in 1955, Marty McFly learns that the future Doc Brown is trapped in 1885. The only one who can help Marty now is, of course, the Doc Brown in 1955, who helped him in the first movie. The two devise a plan to send Marty back home, but things get heavy before they can arrange his return when the two discover the Doc's tombstone and learn they only have 6 days to save him from his fate in the past. And get back to the future! That's been everywhere. There's a particularly great formula with this series. It all starts in 1985, and then we get to go back to 1955, and then forward again to 2015. 30 years back and 30 years further. On the surface, it would appear that this series had locked itself into only 2 directions. You might have thought that, but not so, as we break from the usual formula to go 100 years into the past this time. Or is it just 70?
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
In any case, it was evident that this series still had steam, and fans of it were eagerly awaiting its conclusion that had been predetermined and set up from the previous films. That's part of what made this series so great, in that it knew when to let go. Could they have made more? Well, of course, but something that's been greatly forgotten by studios since this time is that ability to let things rest and to quit while you're ahead. I could cite various horror franchises all day, but it would only emphasize the point that these days we are flooded with unnecessary sequels, and everyone trying to be Marvel and making everything connected so that we can give money to this entry only to be told that we're being set up for the next one. The thing is, not everyone is Marvel, and it really does let the air out of the movie when you walk away knowing that you've been hamstrung into this feeling like you need to see the next entry in order to receive your full payoff, instead of just being satisfied with what you came for. And all of this begs the question, what makes a sequel or series truly great? When the first Back to the Future ended, the feeling of where that story concluded left myself and fans of the series fully satisfied. Yet the potential of the series was also so clear and obvious. If you could go back in time, surely you would have to be able to go forward some way. Thus, none of us were surprised when reading the words "to be continued" at the end of part 1. Ah, but the original cut of Back to the Future didn't actually include the "to be continued" cliffhanger. They didn't add that until it went to VHS. Yes, I realize that, but you're ruining the point I was trying to make. Would you get out of here? You need to address that. Jerk. And what a signature this was. The promise that the next time, while a continuation, would be a new experience, which is an absolute must when crafting a sequel. The second film followed a similar formula, though was noticeably different from the original film, and offered its own twist to the mythology. Unlike the first film, however, when it ended, the immediate plot wasn't resolved. Marty hadn't gotten back to the future yet. We were satisfied with the resolution to the second film's conflict, but the conflict of the series was expanded, and there was so clearly more to be told. The groundwork for the third entry was already laid. The setup for the final chapter is somewhat different, though. Instead of reading "to be continued," this time we read the words "to be concluded." There's a departure here from the original formula, because now, whatever we see next will be seen through the lens of knowing the end is imminent. This theme resonates throughout the film also, from the emotional opening as we pan across the two lead characters, to the knowledge given to us through them when they learn they must destroy the DeLorean upon returning to the future.
Destroy it?
Yeah, well, it's a long story, Doc.
In the previous chapters, we got to see how interweaving timelines were sort of affecting things in the present or the future, and there is still some of that, and there's still a lot that longtime fans of the series will notice and appreciate, but for the most part, the setting of this film is confined to the Old West. In fact, this movie makes for a pretty fun western, and it's surprising how well its sci-fi elements meld with this genre. While the atmosphere in itself is definitely foreign to the series and takes some getting used to, it also frees it up to do something different. And it can be pretty silly at times, sure, but there's something more tender about this entry than the others, particularly in the plot surrounding Doc Brown. There's this pleasant pace that allows you to grow more connected to these characters without being too distracted by the atmosphere, and in the end you get to see how they've grown through these adventures also. And in all fairness, it can come off pretty sappy at times, and that can even wear on you during some moments. But overall, I would say that this film finds a way to be endearing. The humor is also pretty great. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something particularly hilarious about Marty's first reaction to being whisked back to 1885.
I'm dying.
The special effects in this movie are fun too. Admittedly, you can tell what is practical and what isn't, and some of what isn't doesn't always work too well, but I wouldn't say it hurts the overall experience, though I will just say there are going to be some who disagree with me on this. The practical sequences with the train, however, are outstanding, and where it culminates is still impressive to watch, I don't care who you are. I will also add that the transition to high definition was great with this movie. It looks pristine, with popping colors and fantastic attention to detail. Now, how did the performances turn out? Does it really need saying? Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are still Marty and Doc, which means they're loads of fun to watch and are still what keep the series entertaining. Marty's humor is cheesy but well-timed, and Doc manages to pluck our heartstrings just a little with a surprisingly romantic take on his character. Apparently even the Doc can find love, which we learn from the beginning of the film, by the way, and it comes in the form of Mary Steenburgen as Clara. Overall, I'd say she's a nice addition to the crew and plays a sweet counterpart to the Doc. Back to the Future Part 3 is rated PG for language and some mild violence. The Back to the Future series is a landmark in science fiction fantasy. It continues to capture audiences with its simple but smartly written storyline. As it continues to age as a film series, it remains clever, funny, and engaging. While there's a sense from some that the sequels don't live up to the original, I feel it worth noting that the conclusion feels like a quiet celebration of everything we loved about the whole concept. And while it isn't a perfect movie, I found it a very nice way to end a truly great series. Back to the Future Part 3 gets a 4 out of 5.
It's a very interesting story, Future Boy.
I love this series so much, and I can't believe it took me so long to get around to it. It's the kind of thing I can't wait to share with my kids someday. I love that it doesn't try to fit too much into its plot, and that it still maintains a good sense of imagination and self-awareness. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Have you ever been late to a series the way that I was to this one? Don't hold back now. Put them in the comments below so that we can rag on you. Anyway, I hope you liked the review. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check that flux capacitor, because you're on Real Time with Joe.
Got my tea.